With Brianne Depeche and Joni Grave. The big idea, the dirty little secret about attack ads is that they usually work. That's why campaigns run them, even though voters constantly complain about how much they hate negativity. Ed Gillespie, the Republican nominee for governor in Virginia, has been running some doozies this fall. He's spent millions on often misleading ads that paint his patrician opponent, Democratic Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam, as soft on pedophiles and the Latino gang MS-13. He's made the protection of Confederate monuments one of his signature issues. "I'm for keeping 'em up, and he's for taking 'em down," Gillespie says to camera. And that's a big difference in November. These spots represent a stunning about-face for a former Republican National Committee chairman who made a name for himself evangelizing about the need for the GOP to reject dog whistles and improve outreach to minorities. But Gillespie seems willing to trade his reputation for victory if that's what is required. And his strategy is paying dividends. A new Washington Post Schar School poll finds that Northam's lead has narrowed to 5 percentage points, down from 13 points a month ago. He leads among likely voters 49% to Gillespie's 44%, a margin that is not statistically significant. The Republican has closed a motivation gap and seen his share of support rise among supporters of President Trump, without driving away independents and moderates. Gillespie is still the underdog, but if he prevails next week, it will be because he found a way to thread the needle in the age of Trump, maintaining his appeal to establishment Republicans while also wading into the fever swamps of Trumpism. This matters, even if you don't live in Virginia, because dozens of Republicans across the country are going to follow Gillespie's playbook in 2018 if it works. Top GOP operatives in the battle for control of the House tell me that they're watching closely, running polls and using focus groups to gauge the potency of the wedge issues Gillespie has embraced, specifically MS-13 and sanctuary cities. They think Gillespie is showing a possible path to victory for several vulnerable Republicans in exurban districts. You are also likely to see similar lines of attack against Democratic senators and in several marquee governors' races in purple states. Our story about the new poll quotes several respondents who are unnerved by Gillespie's deflating and divisive messaging. A slight majority of Virginians, 51%, think Gillespie has run a mainly negative campaign. But 37% say the same of Northam. Scott Clement and Laura Vazella note in their write-up of the results that there are only modest signs of backlash in the crosstabs. Voters split about evenly when asked whom they trust to handle illegal immigration, but Gillespie has an 8 percentage point edge on trust to handle crime and public safety. Gillespie trailed by more than 20 points at the beginning of October in the swing-voting Northern Virginia exurbs that encompass Loudoun County. Now he's tied with Northam at 44%. Among self-identified conservatives, Gillespie's lead over Northam grew from 56 points to 69 points. Gillespie's lead among white voters without college degrees has increased from 25 points to 35 points. Trump won this group by 47 points in 2016 exit polls. Gillespie's supporters have caught up to Northam's in motivation to vote and in attention to the race. Among registered voters, an identical 71% of both Northam and Gillespie supporters say they are certain to vote or have already done so, a shift from 4 weeks ago, when Northam backers had a nearly 10-point edge on this measure. Gillespie's commercials have moved the needle enough that Northam feels compelled to run a response ad decrying the fear-mongering as despicable and false. "I'm a pediatrician, and for Ed Gillespie to say I would tolerate anyone hurting a child is despicable," Northam says to the camera. In politics, there's some truth to the old saying that when you're explaining you're losing. But there's also an existential risk in letting attacks this nasty go unanswered. That's how swift-boated became a verb in 2004. Northam remains more likely than not to win next Tuesday. He has a big advantage on who voters trust more to handle health care and race, two concerns that are top of mind. He's also up 11 points among women, who are more likely to vote than men. But the race is closer than the fundamentals suggest it should be. Virginia has moved to the left over the past decade. Barack Obama became the first Democrat to carry the Old Dominion in a presidential election since Lyndon Johnson. Last year, with Senator Tim Kaine on the ticket, Virginia was the only southern state that Hillary Clinton carried. Trump's approval rating is 38% among likely voters, with 59% disapproving. 52% of likely voters strongly disapprove of